And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on in to the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Joe and Howard this week, as we have combined both Huddle Up with Howard and the Lunch Show, because Howard, our co-host, your co-host for Huddle Up, my co-host for this show, he's somewhere down in the Gulf on a cruise ship right now with the former Cardinals and Chip Carey and all kinds of Cardinal fans for the next week. So while we are stuck in an ice storm in St. Louis, he is just sailing the blue seas.
Isn't it amazing how Claib's timing just always kind of works out perfectly? I mean, who could have predicted the weather to be as it is?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he is off into the Caribbean someplace. Amazing how that works.
Right. He's, also, wearing shorts, eating off the buffets on the cruise ship. And we're stuck in our homes, as many of you, and hopefully those of you watching at home are staying safe today and joining us for today's show. Very football heavy show today. We had 4 games this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, which bring us down to our final 4 in the NFL next weekend. It will be the Ravens and Chiefs on one side and the Lions and the 49ers on the others. And Howard, this past weekend, we saw those 4 games play out. And I tell you what, I went into it and I could not have been more wrong in my prediction. Not so much of the outcomes, just kind of the assessment of how the games would go, because I really thought that it was going to come to a point, and if we kind of run through all the games, I really thought that it was going to come to a point where the time off for the Ravens was going to affect them with how hot the Texans have been playing. And I really thought that the Bills and how they've been playing all year was going to really, kind of let them run the game against the Chiefs this weekend. So we'll get into those in just a second. We want to remind you that we are brought to you each and every week here by the folks at Ameren, Illinois, who I assume are out there. They are one of the people that are working today. They are not able to take a day off on when the weather is like it is today. Also powered by Gray Bar and driven by the folks at Munganass Burkhardt Alton Toyota and Munganass St. Louis Acura, which, by the way, great rates right now, 3.49% over 72 months on some models and over 250 used cars available. So when all this ice is gone, head on out to Munganass St. Louis Acura and Munganass Alton Toyota this next week. So, Howard, let's start with those Ravens. And I guess just to start off, is there any team that can beat the Ravens right now in the NFL with these 3 teams remaining?
Well, certainly I think that if you look at how the Ravens have progressed throughout the season, so much was riding on, I'd say, the health and the skill set of Lamar Jackson. And I don't think at the beginning of the season anyone really, really thought, if they're being honest with you, that the Ravens would be in a position to be heading to the Super Bowl, if they win the AFC Championship. I think a lot of bets would have gone against Lamar Jackson. Yet, he has been the steadying force for the Ravens. To answer your question, I think if there's a team that's going to beat the Ravens, it's the team that they will face next week in the championship game, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. I think when it's all said and done, Andy Reid, when his career as a coach is over, he will be right up there at the top of the elite coaches that have ever done it in the NFL as one of the best, with a team that I think has been beleaguered primarily because the receiving core has been maybe slightly better than average this year with so many drops and not being up to the same level as they were when they had Tyreek Hill. Of course, Tyreek Hill, before being traded to the Dolphins, did so much for the Chiefs. So they've had to adapt and adjust. The Kansas City defense, I think, has been underrated in so much as they have really made plays throughout the season when they've needed it most. And I think that's probably been the biggest key for this team, to play the complementary defense to what Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco, who to me is just a fabulous back. Really love the way he runs. And he's been a difference maker. So I think the Chiefs, I'm going to give the edge to the Chiefs simply because it's just hard to bet against them. Ravens may win, but I think the odds, from my point of view, will go with what Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have been able to do.
You mentioned you mentioned the game yesterday. Chiefs Bills came down to, once again, Buffalo missing or losing a playoff game due to a field goal being wide right, and that was just, I mean, back and forth. That first half was so entertaining to watch, and then to see the adjustments the teams made to come out in that second half. I tell you what, I mean, we talk coaching changes. McDermott up in Buffalo right now, they have fallen short several years in a row, which Buffalo fans, again, have been cursed with for their entire career, of just being in that same position year after year and getting so close and not being able to finish it off. At some point, do you kind of look at the coaching there and think, we've got it real good right now, maybe we make that change to get it to be, to get to that next level, knowing full well that it could just completely fall off after that?
I think I'll address your question this way. So you've got Buffalo in the AFC. Then you've got this team in the NFC that resides in the city of Dallas. See any similarities? Although I think Buffalo's record wasn't as good this year in the regular season, but Dallas 12, 13 wins, I don't know, 3-4 years in a row. You get to the point and you win the division. Similar results every year, yet you falter in big games. Here's the question, and I know it gets so emotional, especially when you start asking people to really review what just happened immediately after the game. Too many emotions involved. And I'm probably one of those when it comes to Dallas. So I think the same, as I get through this, the same sentiment will probably apply. If you get rid of Sean McDermott in Buffalo, if you get rid of Mike McCarthy in Dallas, who's your next move? Right. Where's your next move? Who will you bring in as your next coach? And who's to say that decision that you make among those candidates available is going to be the right decision? So in some ways, the devil is better than the devil that you don't know. With a few tweaks, I'd say in the Buffalo situation, it seems that it did come down to coaching decisions. I think maybe very glaring coaching decisions, when you kind of take a step back and look at it. In the Dallas game against Green Bay in the playoff win, it just seems like the team just did not have a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, because I know I follow the Cowboys and always have since I finished playing with them. And I can almost tell you from the very first drive or two whether the Cowboys are going to play well and win or be lousy and lose. And when I saw the way Green Bay marched down the field, I thought, and they scored right away, I thought, this is a wrap. This is not good. You can almost have a sense of how games are going to turn out. And that's probably the experience that I've been in being around the league, of course, and seeing a number of games, both as a spectator and as a broadcaster. You just kind of, and as a player, you just kind of know when things are going or not going to go well. And that was the sense that I had from the very beginning. And it turned out to come to fruition. With Buffalo, I think, I was going to say, let me finish this one. With Buffalo, I think it's not quite the same, but it seems that with the situation with the Bills, it seems that they force the quarterback to do too much on his own. I don't know that he still will trust the process of distributing the ball the way it should be distributed. They fired their offensive coordinator earlier in the season, Ken Dorsey. So they're working with a different coordinator, obviously. And there has to be, I think some measure of accountability given to that. It's hard to make those types of changes during the season. And I think you can ultimately point your finger to that move as to why the Bills didn't quite get it done offensively this year.
You know, when they make the DeMar Hamlin movie 20, 30 years from now, he's going to convert in the movie on that fourth down, that fake punt. That'll be the way that the storybook ending goes with it, is that we'll have to look back and go, no, that's not how I remember it happening back in 2024 when that when that movie inevitably comes out years down the down the line. So that's the that's the matchup next week. It's going to be the Chiefs and it's going to be the Ravens. You touched a little bit. We haven't really touched on the NFC just yet. So let's shift over there. If you know, it's as much as I want to say the 49ers seem like this unbeatable team. When they face the Ravens, I mean, it's hard to look past what the Ravens did to them in their game earlier in the regular season. And Green Bay, they came on strong at the end of the year, and they gave them a battle on Saturday night. Down the line, Brock Purdy finally showed up in the second half and was able to help them out to get that win late in the game. So you have the 49ers and you have the feel-good story of the NFL this year, the Detroit Lions. And with what Dan Campbell's been able to do up there in Detroit, it's really kind of crazy to think that the Detroit Lions are 60 minutes away from possibly being in a Super Bowl after all these years.
Really is. And that's a team that if you look at their history just over the last 30 or 40 years, you're talking about perennial cellar dwellers, a team that, may look as though it's been cursed for the longest period of time. But, man, they have a group of young playmakers that just seem to be undeterred. You almost look at this as like this is going to be their season. And I think so many people would love to see the underdog, rise from the Phoenix after so many years of being a bottom dweller, to not just get to the Super Bowl, but to win a championship. It would be tremendous for the city of Detroit. Personally, this is one time where I'm actually going to be pulling for the Lions. I just think they're exciting. Dan Campbell is a guy that a little unconventional in his coaching methodologies, I think, but they have that chemistry. They have that makeup in this team that it just kind of seems to be their year. And the 49ers are not infallible. We've seen that with this team. Brock Purdy can ride that hot streak, but man, sometimes he can do some things that just make you want to question, what his thought process is. And maybe that's why Brock Purdy lasted until becoming Mr. Irrelevant. You figure there's a reason that the draft evaluators and scouts come to certain conclusions about certain players. But I will say Brock Purdy has benefited by having a tremendous group of players around him: Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, pretty good offensive line as well. And I think that is what has helped them. But, it's hard to account and to defend against a team that has just been, and everything has been going well for them this season, and that's the Lions. They've got a group of youth, and Jared Goff is playing as well as he has since he's been a pro. It may be their year. Don't know if Deebo Samuel is going to be able to play, although if he plays, will he be completely healthy with his shoulder injury? That may play a factor as well in this game. But regardless, I think it'll be certainly an exciting matchup between those two teams, and one that we haven't seen. Of course, we've seen the 49ers so many times in this situation, but
I want to get into the Deebo Samuel stuff later on in the show. But as far as the Lions go, and before we head to break, just to look at what the trade. I mean, we saw it was talked all about in week 1 of the playoffs, the trade between the Rams and the Lions, swapping quarterbacks, all the draft picks that went. I'm trying to think back. This is just, of the 4 major sports, trying to think back at a trade that worked out that you could see as a true win-win. And it's really hard to find one that matches to the level of Stafford for Goff and what the Rams have done and now what the Lions are doing with the effects of this trade? Is there one that you can think of in any sports history?
I would say probably something that maybe the closest thing is probably when Dallas traded Herschel Walker years ago in the 90s for all those draft picks. You remember that? Jimmy Johnson traded Walker to the Vikings.
But what did the
And-
Vikings? I mean, what did the Vikings do after that, though? Right?
Well, that's the thing. The Vikings didn't do anything, but
Right.
the Cowboys, it made Jimmy Johnson look brilliant, for shipping off a puzzle piece that the Vikings thought that they might benefit them from having a guy like Walker and what he could do as far as being one of the best and fastest straight line runners. But he wasn't necessarily a complete back at the NFL level. And then all of the draft picks that Dallas actually and the players that they acquired as a result all contributed to the success of that team in the 90s. That maybe not the best comparison, but I can't think of anything in recent history that even approaches what's happened between that trade for quarterback between the Rams and the Lions.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, take a break from talking about what's going on the field and head to the sidelines, talk about some of the latest coaching changes and what's to come right here on the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Joe and Howard. We are powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura right here on ClaibsOnline.com.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Gray Bar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Who does this?
Back here on the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Joe and Howard, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura, and hopefully none of you are out there on the roads in one of your Munganass cars today. Stay home and just wait for for all this ice to melt and get back out there come tomorrow. Howard Richards in for Mike Claiborne. And just kind of combining Huddle Up with Howard and the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show this week. Recap of all the games in the first segment. If you missed any of those, you can find the podcast or rewatch the video when it is posted later on today. Howard, we have seen so many different coaching changes all throughout football already. Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, they both leave their longtime teams. Nick Saban retiring, Bill Belichick probably going to be coaching somewhere next year, but we've already seen his replacement named up there in New England. I know that we have so many more dominoes that are going to fall when it comes to all of these coaching changes. I guess the big one that we are waiting for right now is what's going to happen in Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. Where do you think the defending national champion head coach is going to be on the sidelines next year?
Given what Michigan loses after the 2023 season, their national championship season, I don't know that Harbaugh is – I won't say it's quite a rebuild for Michigan, but I don't know that they would be that competitive. And Ohio State has been stacking players. They got the transfer quarterback from Kansas State and Will Howard. They've got some key recruits coming in and new additions through the transfer portal. I actually believe that, better than 50-50 chance that Harbaugh moves on to the National Football League. Simply because there's been so much baggage, of course, with, the Spygate scandal, with the alleged Spygate scandal, with, someone from the Michigan staff allegedly videotaping practices and games, well, not practices, but games ahead of the time that's allowed by NCAA rules. That something like that is probably always going to follow him, whether he admits to knowing about it or not. Ultimately, you become responsible as the manager, the head coach. You're responsible for whatever happens within your organization. And I think you move on. I think he just will move on at some point. Having previous NFL experience and being successful when he was head coach of the 49ers, he's a former NFL player, was a quarterback in the league, knows personnel very well. And I think he's young enough to come in and get it done. He has the temperament, and he's pretty well respected in the league. So that's why I think if I had to make an estimated or educated guess about it, I think he moves on to the NFL. Which team? I don't know. Chargers, Falcons, who knows?
He's been pretty heavily linked to the Chargers. Not so much in Atlanta yet. It does seem like Bill Belichick is who Arthur Blank wants down there in Atlanta, right?
Here's the thing about Belichick, in my opinion, though, and I'm speaking from experience. Dallas went through something late in the 80s with Tom Landry. Landry did not mix youth and experience very well. When it seemed that teams are starting to catch up with the Cowboys' quote-unquote machine, he would not accept the changes that Tex Schramm and the organization, because then owner that bought the team in 1984, H.R. Bum Bright, what people don't know is that he did not like Tom Landry. So he wanted to, he put the pressure on Tex Schramm, as I understood it, to force Landry into making changes. He wanted to fire Landry. But if you're the guy that fires Landry, you can see, how that's going to affect your status in the community. So why not sell the team to someone else that will accomplish and do exactly what you want them to do and get paid for it? So that's why he sells the team to Bum Bright in 1989 for, I think, $75 million. Bright hires Jimmy Johnson. But certainly Jerry Jones is the villain for many, many years. Well, at least until the Cowboys win another Super Bowl. And no one has a negative word to say about our H.R. Bum Bright. But Landry, they brought on probably 2, 3, 4 different coordinators to help the Cowboys offense throughout the years. But he continued to overrule the move by Tex Schramm. And that's why I think the team waddled for a number of years, not being willing to evolve, not being willing to adjust to the changes of the game. And I think partially Belichick trying to do too much, trying to take on that role of both head coach and general manager. I think the game is too advanced to be able to do that. I think people should have separate roles. You're head coach. Focus on coaching, which is something you do well. Allow someone else who's got a different set of eyes to come in and be your general manager or to head up your personnel departments. It takes the pressure off you, but I think it also gives someone else a fresh look at this team to figure out what we can do personnel-wise to move on and to continue to get better.
So back in the 80s, you had Bum Bright, you had Bum Phillips. That the name Bum just doesn't – you don't hear that anymore these days. That's just not a name that you hear in sports or in any walk of life.
Well, you want a bum running the organization?
I'm just saying, why was it such a popular name back in the 80s and it's just completely lost on us now 40 years later? Let's bring it back. So let's say Harbaugh takes one of those jobs. Let's say he goes to the Chargers. Where do you think the next step is then in Michigan? If you are, it's defending national champion. Yeah, you know what you're getting in as far as the legacy of that team, but you are losing a lot. But on the other hand, it's a 12-team playoff now, so you don't have to beat Ohio State every year to make it into that Final Four.
Well, certainly with Michigan, it's a status thing. It maybe one of the biggest rivalries, certainly in all of college football, Michigan, Ohio State. The viewership is just off the charts every year, regardless of where the records are. Harbaugh before this year, I don't know how many consecutive years he lost to Ohio State, just didn't perform well. I think they ultimately probably elevate Sharon. I can't think of his last name. The offensive coordinator and offensive line coach who guided Michigan in Harbaugh's absence this past year. I think the logical move would be to elevate him as its next head coach. Whether or not that happens or not remains to be seen. But it seemingly on the surface, being an outsider, what he was able to accomplish, how well, not just how well liked he is, but how well regarded he is, throughout the college football landscape. And how well the Michigan people think of him seems like the natural progression to elevate him. That's where I think Michigan ultimately ends up, or if I were a betting man, that's the decision I think they should make.
There's still a handful of jobs out there. One more that I think that you mentioned it earlier in the show. I don't think it's a 0% chance of happening. I wonder if this is Andy Reid's last year, depending on how the season ends for him. And I don't know which way puts him towards retirement first, winning or losing at this point. But do you think that he has considered this possibly being his last season?
If he has, we have not received any indicators that it is. And he has done an extremely great job of holding everything very close to the vest. He hasn't telegraphed anything, whether he's going to stay, whether he's going to lose or leave. Maybe his best coaching job, especially if the Chiefs do win the Super Bowl, by losing, Eric Bieniemy, of course, to the Washington Commanders, and then having the challenges that he's had at receiver, but figuring out a way to get it done. And the Chiefs didn't look great in a bunch of games this year. A lot of people would not have predicted them to be in the position that they're in, yet here they are. And I think Andy Reid deserves a ton of that credit. Along with, guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, of course, stepping up on offense. But guys on defense, Chris Jones, who maybe to me overall, maybe the best defensive lineman in the game right now. Nick Bolton, of course, was out for a number of weeks because of the broken wrist that he had surgery on. But the Chiefs have just found a way. I think Steve Spagnuolo, after kind of a disastrous career in New York as a Giants coach, he has been resurrected. What he's done as defensive coordinator, even with some missing parts as well. After they lost players after the last Super Bowl, they're right back there in a position to get right back to the Super Bowl again this year.
We will preview the upcoming AFC-NFC championship game in just a bit and get Howard's predictions on who he thinks is going to be playing each other in the Super Bowl when we come back. It is the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Joe and Howard, powered by Ameren, Illinois, powered by Graybar, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura here on Claibs Online.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Final few minutes here of the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show, powered by Graybar and driven by Mungenast Burkhardt Alton Toyota. Claibs, when he went down to Florida before he got on that cruise ship, drove a car from Mungenast Burkhardt Alton Toyota, one of the new 2024 Highlanders that he will be driving around there at spring training all around Jupiter until about March when I go down there and get the car from him down there in Jupiter. But we thank the folks out at Mungenast Burkhardt Alton Toyota for providing us with those wheels each and every year at Cardinal Spring Training. And plenty of Cardinal talk coming your way next week when Claibs returns, as we'll know who is the new inductees into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And plus, looking forward to talking with him about the Cardinals' recent signing of Matt Carpenter over the weekend and get his thoughts on that when he comes back. Of course, when he also comes back, we'll know who will be playing in Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, where Claibs Online once again will be there. I'll be out there all week long, out on Radio Row, and all of the surrounding events at the Super Bowl coming up in, February 5th through February 9th is when we'll be out there doing the Radio Row thing once again. So this weekend, this Sunday, Howard, we have Ravens hosting the Chiefs in the early game. The late game, the 49ers playing host to the Lions. I'm sure the NFL would love to have the Chiefs and Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl. But as we talked about earlier on in the show, Ravens, no team has been hotter the second half of the year than the Baltimore Ravens have been. So what is it going to take for the Chiefs to upset the Ravens right now? Ravens a 3.5-point favorite.
Just take a quick step back. How interesting would it be if Chiefs get into the Super Bowl and your halftime entertainment was Taylor Swift?
I mean, if you're Usher, you got to make the call and you got to try to get her out there for something, right?
It would be must-see TV,
right?
There'd be a lot of people that would hate it for whatever reason. I don't know. I think Taylor Swift has been great for the Chiefs and for the NFL, but I don't know. And I think I don't think she was a distraction at all. Knowing that as a player, your focus is on what's happening on the field. You're not worried about anything happening, of course, up into the stands. He's a consummate professional. Just look at the production. He's still enjoying. Talking about Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. If anything, she's been more of an inspiration. And I think the Chiefs fans, the overwhelming majority of them, love having Taylor Swift. And it's been great for ratings. Even people that say they, don't care about that. Trust me, they're tuning in to get a glimpse of Taylor Swift. But I think that,
this Sunday, I think after the performance he put on yesterday in the game, I think you got to be tuning in this coming Sunday to see what Jason Kelce's going to do next.
Yeah,
that's what you got to do is see see how little Jason's going to be wearing up in the suite with the with his family. Because Jason Kelce, I believe, was probably about 20, 30 beers deep. I mean, that's the new show now. I mean, forget Taylor.
Right.
Taylor, it's a whole... Taylor's old news. I mean, she's been up in that suite all year. Now you can add Jason to it. It's that's must see TV.
Swift Kelce, man, what a story it's been. And what is football? Football is first and foremost, it's a sport, but right up there with it, it's entertainment. I mean, if you look at in the history of television, some of probably most of the highest rated television programs have been NFL games. Whether people want to accept that or not, it's the truth. The NFL's it's a machine. They figured out how to do it. And they're going to continue to dominate the airwaves with innovation, whether it's intentional or not. The bottom line is getting fans to watch, and that's how the NFL makes its money. And this year is going to be no different. But it's interesting. Chiefs go on the road to Baltimore. Patrick Mahomes won his first playoff game on the road. I don't think that this team really cares where it plays. They've shown that they can play in good weather. And certainly playing in Buffalo, they have even when Mahomes bad weather when they lost in Kansas City before, it doesn't matter what the weather is, just as long as his team is clicking. And I think that this team is clicking on all cylinders. I think they have enough weapons right now, even though they are probably I think it's a 3.5-point underdog. I think the Chiefs can win in Baltimore. And I'm going to pick them to win in Baltimore because I think you're going to force Baltimore to be one-dimensional. You absolutely have to defend against Lamar Jackson, and with a quarterback that can run as well as he can, 100 yards rushing in the divisional round, you've got to account for them. But I think the Chiefs will be up to task, and they're going to if they force him to make all the plays, then that takes away what Baltimore can do. And I think it takes away from what Baltimore can do offensively. But I think the Chiefs defense will be up to the task in defending all the other areas that Baltimore could use against the Chiefs.
On the other side, Lions will travel to San Francisco to play the 49ers. The line on that game, Howard, is 6.5 right now in favor of the 49ers. I would imagine that would drop. God, that might drop down to 4.5, depending on the health of Deebo Samuel once we know what his status is as the week goes on. Where he had one catch in the win over the Packers before getting hurt, and majority of the 49ers losses this year came when Deebo Samuel was hurt in the middle of the season. It is I get how good of a player he is, but it really is fascinating to see just how different of a team the 49ers are when Deebo Samuel isn't on the field snap after snap after snap for that team. Just knowing all of the different weapons that they have around them, just starting with McCaffrey and Kittle and go from there, just missing one guy affects that team so much.
It really does. And maybe it affects him more here because he is such an influential piece of that offense. And your quarterback needs to have this guy, that guy available for them. Now, they do have the other receiver that is, could become a guy that could take over the game as well. But I just think that, Detroit may be the most complete team when you look at offense, defense, and special teams. It's been a special ride for this team this year. It would be disappointing for the fans of the Motor City to see their team lose, of course, in the championship game. But, having Dan Campbell, a guy that played in the league, I just think he is going to have this team so ready and focused. The only question is will they be too high when they go out there, playing on the road in the North Bay. But I think forget about the line. I'm going to pick the Lions to win in an upset.
All right, there you go. Chiefs Lions, the prediction for Howard Richards. I'm going the exact opposite with that. I'm going Ravens 49ers with just how well both those teams
that's interesting.
have,
Yeah.
So going the exact opposite for that. So you and I will have to keep in touch on Sunday and see how those play out. Howard, thank you for filling in this week as Claibs is down in the down somewhere off the coast of Miami, working on his tan all week with the on the Cardinal cruise.
That little bobblehead is he's he'll kill me for saying that, but we love him. We love him like a brother, man. But I hope he's having fun, and I can't wait to see him when he gets back. It's always a pleasure to fill in for Claibs, and always a pleasure to join you, Joe.
He is Howard Richards. I am Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of the Ameren, Illinois Lunch Show with Joe and Howard, powered by Ameren, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura. If you missed any of the show today, find it wherever you find your Claibs Online podcasts and give it a listen to catch up on everything that you might have missed. Until next time, we'll talk to you here later on Claibs Online.
Munganass St. Louis Acura would like to upgrade your current BEV experience. The new ZDX offers the performance that you expect from Acura, but upgrades your ownership experience with our award-winning team. Whether you're looking for a more convenient charging solution or an upgrade to a new vehicle, come in today and make a reservation for the all-electric ZDX coming soon. Munganass St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.